In this video, I'm going to be unboxing a Coleman 425 Guide Series Naptha stove. This stove was sent to me by the Coleman Company as a replacement for a defective stove that I had purchased a few months ago. More about that later. I'm excited to have this stove as an adult because I used to use these years ago as a Boy Scout. We take these on camping trips where we weren't carrying them very much. We put them in a canoe, or when we drive out to national park campsites. They're portable, but not when backpacking, so they really do serve their purpose well when used appropriately. Usually one was enough to carry with us as a scout troop, but we'd often bring two just in case a canoe capsized. We'd always have an extra one because they really would sink to the bottom of the lake or the river. So here's that stove I had to have replaced. This is a Coleman dual fuel 533 stove. And these ones I also used a lot in Scouts. It was actually a similar stove to this that I would use called the Peak 1, which is also a Naptha stove, and I really like them. So actually I always refer to this stove as a Peak 1 stove, even though it is not the Peak 1. The current Peak 1 stove you can buy is a propane stove, and it's just a little attachment that goes on a propane tank. But these ones were great for backpacking and portable use. The thing I really miss about the old Peak 1 stoves is they had these 3 fold-out feet that would really make them nice and stable on the ground. This one just sits right on the fuel tank. So, but it does have a wider base, so it is more stable in some ways. You can see the top burner there, about 5 inches across. And this stove had a really bad fuel leak. The fuel was pooling at the top. It didn't catch on fire or explode, but when I would pump it for the second time after lighting it, just to regain the pressure, I would notice maybe after a few minutes there'd be fuel that was pooling on the top. And I actually tested it out about 4 more times after it originally leaked, just because I have so much faith in Coleman products. So I really wanted to make sure I was doing nothing wrong. And when I called customer service, Coleman actually asked me if I was okay, which was really nice of them, and offered to send me a comparable stove. And I asked for the 425 because I had already purchased so much naphtha fuel, so they agreed to it. So these stoves were great for all sorts of things. This particular stove that I just put up here was a backup stove, and really simple to use. We call these a bottle top stove. I think that is the actual name. These ones are a little bit more simple to operate than the Naptha stoves. It's just basically a really lightweight burner, 8-inch burner, screws onto a disposable propane tank, and also comes with a wider plastic base that you put it on. So it's actually a very stable stove. And I purchased these stoves because in my neighborhood we have a lot of blackouts. If you have a storm, it often really messes up the power lines, which are above ground. They're not buried. And I found that using a battery or electric generator to boil water or power up a hot plate or a kettle used way too much electricity. So gas was definitely the way to go for cooking and boiling water. So I really depend a lot on these stoves during blackouts. You can see my big thing of Coleman camp fuel in the background there. So here it is, the Guide Series 425. This was sent to me today, came via Purolator, and there wasn't any other packaging on it. Actually, it was just as you see here. It arrived at the front door. There was no tape holding it shut, so I'm surprised it didn't bust open or that there are no dents on it. I think it was probably shipped first class, so thank you, Coleman, for sending this and replacing the 533, which I actually offered to send back or have them fix it. And they really insisted that they just send me a new stove. They didn't have any 533s in stock. So that was another reason why I had to choose a comparable stove. And I'm really glad they agreed to the 425 because it's a stove I'm somewhat familiar with. So yeah, it's again minimally packed, but it must be a really rugged stove to not be bent up or have any dents in it. So it looks in really good condition, as I would hope. Now this is something I found really funny. The handles on these things have not changed in years. Still the same sort of, not flimsy, but very thin steel handle that just kind of cuts off the circulation to your fingers. It's not the type of thing you want to carry around for too long. That's why I was saying before, throw it in your canoe, throw it in your car, take it RVing or something. It's portable in some ways, but you definitely don't want to be walking around too long with one of these. So let's put it down flat here. Check it out. Yeah, front it says Coleman 425, and it looks exactly like it did years ago. One thing I noticed about it, well, actually, in some of the older Coleman double burner stoves, they were really loud and clanky to carry around. This particular one kind of has a, as you can see here, a texturized paint job or metal finish, which kind of dampens the clanky quality of it, I guess. Sheet metal is usually kind of noisy when it's formed into a box like this, and I remember the old stoves were very loud when you'd carry them around, very squeaky, and if you'd bang it on something accidentally, it was really loud. So let's get the tape off of here. Now those are the trademarked, they call them the wind block panels, so they protect against the wind. Kind of a funny thing to trademark because it seems like an obvious solution to high winds is just put little wind baffles, but they decided to trademark them. So there they are, the wind block panels. You can see here on the lid there's all the instructions and some warnings on the stove. The instructions are in French and English because we're in Canada here, so it's in 2 languages. So those labels take up most of the lid area there. And of course, never use these indoors. They create a lot of carbon monoxide. In some movies, you actually see some people using these indoors, and that's totally not possible. You would die within minutes from carbon monoxide poisoning because these burn liquid fuel. So you have to use them in a ventilated outdoor area. So let's get the grate off. It's a pretty rugged cooktop there, I have to say. Very heavy, very rugged. Can't bend that at all. It's like a barbecue almost, barbecue grill. Let's get the fuel tank out. Same as I remembered from years ago. The only difference I see here, just right off the bat, is they decided to paint the fuel cap red. Now this is something funny. They actually chain the fuel tank to the body of the stove. And the reason for this is the chain is there to comply with Consumer Chemicals and Containers Regulations 2001. I think this might be only in Canada. I'm not sure. But this chain was also on the dual fuel 533, and there was a label attached to it. And it's kind of annoying because on the 533, it was just this random chain hanging from it. So I'm going to call them and ask them if I can take this off, if it's still safe to use. I don't know. I have to find out. But it's slightly annoying. But the label says to keep it on. All right, so I'm just plugging in the generator here. These things are replaceable, apparently, if the generator, I don't know if it wears out or if it gets too old, you can actually buy a new one and put it on. So it's nice that the parts are replaceable. So I succeeded in getting the fuel tank on. I'm going to take out the rest of the cardboard. And it's actually kind of difficult to get out. I don't want to bend anything. I don't want another fuel leak. I don't want to cause it. There we go. There's the instruction manual. And I'm going to read that from back to front. I think it's only about 5-6 pages. And there's a label telling you not to remove the chain. So I won't. I will leave it on. Now I think I remember how to get these wind block panels back. They're kind of hard to open. I think they... No, this can't be right. This can't be right. Come on, think back to the Boy Scout days. Okay. I think this is it. There we go. That seems about right. It's funny that they stuck with these hairpins. Now this hairpin, I'm not going to say this, the hairpins they use to hold these in place, they've been on the earlier models and they haven't really changed it. Again, not a lot has changed on this stove. The only thing that has really changed is the texture of the sheet metal, which I'm glad they changed. Much more rugged. So let's get this back on, and there we go. All ready to fire up. Now, the one thing this stove does not include is a fuel funnel, which I find kind of funny. On the dual fuel 533, a fuel funnel is included, and it's really a practical thing to have. On this particular stove, you do not get a funnel, which I find is weird because it's definitely a more costly, more expensive stove. You think they could have just thrown one in. And there's many places to store it in the body of the stove, just like the fuel tank, but it does not have one. So I will definitely keep it. Now, I can't quite remember how to fire one of these up, so I'm going to read the instruction manuals and just make sure I'm doing it right. But everything feels nice and snug, nothing's loose, everything feels rugged and high quality. Just exactly what I would expect from the Coleman 425. I really can't wait to use this, and this will definitely be great to have during one of our blackouts. Especially because it's a double burner. You can see there I just was handling the auxiliary valve to open up the second burner, which you still have to light with a match. But this will be fantastic come time. So I really look forward to using it. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you later.